Imagine the scene. It is a quiet afternoon in the mid-1970s in Haverfordwest, Wales. Imagine two young girls, June and Jennifer Gibbons, walking home from school. They move in a perfectly synchronized gait, their footsteps hitting the pavement at the exact same millisecond. Imagine their faces, identical, stone-cold, and devoid of any expression directed at the outside world. This is the primary behavioral data point. June and Jennifer are known to the community as the silent twins. They have made a calculated, biological pact to never speak to anyone but each other. This is not a philosophy of silence. It is a severe psychological architecture of exclusion. In their bedroom, imagine the sound of a private language, a high-speed, bird-like twittering that no one else can decipher. The power dynamic between the two is an absolute, closed loop. They are technically brilliant, spending their days writing thousands of words in secret journals, but to the world, they are a void. The archive is open. The investigation into the mechanics of this shared isolation begins with their refusal to integrate, a technical sabotage of social norms that would eventually lead to a dark and lethal conclusion. Imagine the intense expressions of their parents, reaching out to daughters who have already deleted the possibility of external connection. Technical density expansion. The Gibbons twins were diagnosed with elective mutism, a condition that in their case manifested as a total communicative blockade. Clinical observations noted a high-frequency phonological shift in their private dialect, suggesting a specialized neural synchronization typically seen in rare cases of cryptophagia, where a private language is developed between siblings as a mechanism for total environmental isolation. As the twins enter their teenage years, the isolation intensifies. Imagine the walls of their room covered in notebooks. They are writing novels, dark, violent, and technically complex stories that reflect a messy and unsolved internal world. The character of June is the dreamer. Jennifer is the enforcer. The power dynamic is a mirror. If June blinks, Jennifer blinks. If Jennifer refuses to eat, June starves. This is a biological sabotage of the self to maintain the integrity of the pair. They are treated by the school system as educationally subnormal, a clinical label that hides their true intellectual capacity. The reconstruction of their daily routine shows a life spent in a state of suspended animation, waiting for a signal only they can hear. When they finally venture out to interact with the world, they do so through a series of criminal acts, theft, arson, and vandalism. Imagine the orange glow of a fire they set, a biological scream for attention that the world finally hears. The forensic trace of their arson is the first physical evidence of a breaking point. They wanted to be seen, but they only knew how to be felt through destruction. Technical density expansion. The twins' literary output included self-published works like The Pugilist, showing a sophisticated understanding of narrative structure and psychological trauma. Their move toward antisocial behavior is analyzed as a reactive attachment failure, where the internal pressure of their pact demanded an external outlet to validate their existence against a society that had effectively deleted them through misdiagnosis. The investigation shifts to 1982. After their spree of arson, the twins are not sent to a juvenile center, but to Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility for the criminally insane. Imagine the scene: two 19-year-old girls entering a world of concrete and chemical restraint. This is a severe institutional sabotage of their development. For the next 11 years, they are subjected to high doses of antipsychotic medication. The clinical reconstruction of their time in Broadmoor shows a total atmospheric deletion of their creativity. They stop writing. They stop moving. They become statues in a war of chaos. The power dynamic shifts from the twins against the world to the hospital against the twins. Imagine the intense expressions of the nurses as they watch the girls sitting for hours, perfectly still, staring at each other in a shared trance. Every day is a technical loop of medication and monitoring. The forensic trace of their journals from this era shows a growing obsession with a terminal exit. They began to believe that for one of them to truly live and be free, the other had to die. Technical density expansion. Broadmoor's pharmacological protocol involved heavy neuroleptics, which targeted the twins' dopaminergic pathways, effectively suppressing their creative drives while leaving the underlying pact intact. The environment of the hospital acted as a sensory deprivation chamber, intensifying their folie à deux to a point of biological fatalism where death was viewed as a necessary technical requirement for the survival of the individual ego. Imagine the scene in early 1993. After a decade of exclusion, the twins are told they are being transferred to a lower security facility. But imagine the price. According to their only friend, journalist Marjorie Wallace, the twins had made a secret, calculated agreement. One of them would not survive the journey. Jennifer reportedly told Marjorie, "I'm going to die. We've decided." This is a masterpiece of psychological sabotage. They believe their pact was a zero-sum game. The technical link between them was too strong for both to exist in the free world. Imagine the intense expressions of June as she listens to her sister's prophecy. The day of the transfer arrives. They board a van, sitting side by side as they always have. During the short drive, Jennifer leans her head on June's shoulder. By the time they arrive at the new facility, imagine the medical team's shock. Jennifer is unconscious. There's no sign of violence, no struggle, no poison. This is a forensic void. Jennifer Gibbons is declared dead at the age of 29. The cause of death is recorded as acute myocarditis, a sudden inflammation of the heart. Technical density expansion. Acute myocarditis in a young, healthy female with no prior history of viral infection is statistically rare. Forensic analysts consider the possibility of Takotsubo cardiomyopathy or broken heart syndrome, where extreme psychological stress causes a surge of catecholamines that effectively sabotages the heart's electrical system, leading to a sudden and clinical deletion of vital function. The investigation into Jennifer's death reveals a messy and unsolved biological mystery. The autopsy finds no drugs in her system, no trauma, and no underlying disease other than the sudden inflammation of the heart muscle. Imagine the medical examiner staring at heart that simply gave up. This is a clinical deletion triggered by a psychological command. We analyze this as the ultimate power signature. Jennifer died because she decided the pact required it. The power dynamic between the sisters was so absolute that Jennifer's brain may have initiated a lethal biological shutdown to free June. June's reaction is even more telling. Imagine her first words to the nurses after Jennifer's death. "I'm free at last, and at last Jennifer has given up her life for me." The trace of her silence was finally broken. She began to speak, to move, and to interact with the world like a person who had just been born. The forensic trace of their shared life was buried with Jennifer, leaving June to navigate a world she had never known as an individual. Technical density expansion, will-to-die phenomenon, is studied in psychophysiology as a state where the parasympathetic nervous system overreacts to extreme stress, potentially leading to a vagal death. Jennifer's myocarditis could be a secondary biological marker of an intense, chronic stress response that reached a lethal peak during the transition out of Broadmoor. The aftermath of the pact leaves June in a state of clinical transition. Imagine the scene as she visits Jennifer's grave. She is speaking to people now, but her movements are still shadowed by the ghost of her sister. The forensic reconstruction of her recovery shows a woman trying to delete 29 years of silence. She lives a quiet life in West Wales, but the messy and unsolved nature of her sister's death lingers in the air. Was it a murder of the mind? Was it a calculated sacrifice? The intense expressions of the doctors who treated them for years reflect a failure to understand the technical depth of their connection. Every piece of evidence, the journals, the poems, the silence, tell the story of a dual existence that couldn't survive the pressure of individuality. We analyze the silent twins as a clinical study in extreme human synchronization. The trace of Jennifer is found in June's eyes every time she looks in a mirror. Technical density expansion. June's post-Broadmoor adaptation required intense cognitive behavioral therapy to decouple her identity from the twin unit. Longitudinal studies of cryptophagia suggest that when one half of the linguistic unit is removed, the survivor often experiences a rapid acceleration in linguistic and social development, as seen in June's sudden transition to verbal communication. To understand the deletion of Jennifer, we must look at the technical data left behind in their diaries. For years, they wrote about their hatred for each other, a severe and calculated conflict that was the flip side of their love. They were trapped in a biological cage of their own making. Imagine the text. "We have become fatal enemies in each other's eyes. We are a burden to each other." This is the forensic trace of a psychological sabotage that had been brewing for decades. The sacrifice wasn't a sudden whim. It was a technical solution to an intolerable internal pressure. The hospital archives show that they were often separated for short periods as a test, but their biological systems would synchronize even through walls, their heart rates and breathing patterns remaining in lockstep. This isn't philosophy. It's a measurable physiological link that the world didn't have the tools to break without a fatality. Technical density expansion, sympathetic nervous system mirroring, often seen in monozygotic twins, reached an asymptotic limit in the Gibbons case. The chronic elevated cortisol levels from their mutual hostility likely caused cumulative damage to their cardiovascular systems, making the fatal pact a biological inevitability once the environmental stress reached the threshold of their release from Broadmoor. The final minute-by-minute forensic reconstruction of the silent twins dossier ends here. One sister buried, one sister freed, and a technical pact that was fulfilled in blood and silence. The trace left by June and Jennifer Gibbons is a lesson on the severe and calculated power of the human mind over the body. The biological facts are immutable: a heart that stopped on command and a silence that lasted for nearly 30 years. The silent twins case remains a cornerstone in the study of shared psychotic disorders and the limits of institutional care. Your mind is the final piece of this dossier. Imagine joining our community by clicking the subscribe button. Imagine following the traces that the mind hides in the shadows of silence. I am your guide through the darkness, and I will return with a new dossier very soon. Keep your mind sharp. Imagine the scene with your eyes closed. And remember, every piece of evidence tells a story, even the words that are never spoken. This is Mind 74, and we are the keepers of the cold files. The investigation is suspended, but the file remains open. Until next time. Technical density expansion. June Gibbons eventually moved toward a semi-autonomous life, though the silent twin designation remains the defining forensic marker of her history. The case has led to significant revisions in how elective mutism is managed in pediatric psychology, emphasizing early intervention to prevent the technical locking of shared delusional systems.